The last one, and I think it should go without saying in general, happens to deal with a video game journalist. I wouldn't bring this up if it wasn't for the fact that the person actually grabs the ball and starts charging into the right direction just to drop the ball. Although, having read a lot of his op-ed pieces of recent, it seems that this person has really just changed. This is Jonathan Holmes. He works for Kotaku. I know once in a while I've disagreed with him, but usually not to this degree, and I'm not the only one. He had the audacity to say that it was holding grudges for past sins, to be angry at Capcom. Except the problem is these sins are not past sins. And almost everything that Capcom is doing right now, they are doing wrong, and insultingly so. And he's willing to defend them. Some might say, well, he's part of the game journalism. You gotta kind of kiss ass, otherwise they're not going to play ball. And there have been some game companies in the past that have blacklisted journalists because they were butthurt over the game company was butthurt over an honest review, which is one of many problems I have with the gaming industry at large, and I don't see that getting much better anytime soon. Okay, that aside, this was covering the article that I was talking about where Massachusetts rest stops have now opted to remove light gun games because of Sandy Hook. And there was a point where I said, if it was the victims' families that was asking for this, you know what? I would not have a problem with that. But it's moralistic blowhards who feel that it is their job to butt in and say, oh, that's inappropriate, oh, that's disgusting. You know, the kind of people who say that rebuilding the Twin Towers to show these terrorist bastards that no matter how hard they try to hit us, they will never knock us down. That's disrespectful. But then taking some of the scrap iron and metals from the Twin Towers old towers and building a battleship, a literal battleship that has a twin tower design, and then making a commemorative coin to commemorate this ship. No, that's not disrespectful at all. No, that's not being disrespectful. Silly Octavius, you're so backwards in this forward-thinking world of ours. Anyways, and I liked what he had to say up until he starts talking about society. And he starts with a lot of my talking points and then just completely drops off the map, including a link that'll be linked to when I present this article down in the underbar that just made me facepalm. Because now I gotta wonder, is Holmes an anti-vaxxer? And I mean, it's not like he's like, hey, I love violent video games, but hey, stop vaccinating. But the fact that his link about James Holmes comes from a place called Natural Society and has links like McDonald's McRib sandwich and Franken creations of GMOs, toxic ingredients, banned ingredients, home remedies for sinus infections, natural sinus infection treatments, and on and on. I just have to wonder why? What the heck, James? Or Jonathan, God. See, there's James Holmes who did the Aurora shooting, and there's Jonathan Holmes, and wow. I'm speech. Okay, but let me get to this. Otherwise, I'm going to run over time, and I'm really honestly trying not to. Said, I would be happy if violent video games became less popular in an organic and natural way. I too would not mind that. I'm not asking for it, but at this point I could take media or leave it, even though I do advocate for it, and there's no proof that it does anything to your normal, average, well-adjusted child. That could be seen as an indication that American society is slowly becoming less obsessed with glorifying war and gun violence in general. Oh, geez, you're one of these, Holmes. I should have seen it coming. I should have seen it coming when you were attacking your commenters for their well-placed hatred and well-founded hatred of Capcom, a company that has no redeeming qualities as of late, but that's another video. Why am I now seeing this and not so surprised by what I'm going to be reading? To try to force that to happen by blaming and shaming violent games and people who play them, by censoring them out of existence is, at best, like putting a band-aid on a broken leg, or worst, like amputating the wrong leg. Now that I do agree with, absolutely. We live in a society where programs compete for ratings on a daily basis by broadcasting the most violent, really, fear-inducing, yeah, negative news that they can dig up. Again, yes. This this competition often occurs on a 24-hour cycle. This is why I don't watch TV much. This is why I don't watch the news much. It got to be too much. Not too much violence or gore. Gore? Really? Have you seen the broadcast of the guy who shot himself on live national TV? I'm not talking about the recent one that Fox tried to cut up and censor and didn't get finished. I'm talking about the guy who was actually at a news conference and shot himself, and they showed that in all of its reality. It's disturbing reality. Could you get away with that on today's TV? No. And why? Because Janet Jackson had the audacity to show her boob jewelry at the Super Bowl, at a time when most people had reported that they'd either gotten up to go to the bathroom or were not looking at the TV. But oh no, you can shoot somebody live on television, for the most part, censored, but you better not do it while showing a boob, because, oh gosh, you know, our censorship in this country makes so much dang sense, doesn't it? Okay, sorry. We live in a society that perpetuates the false idea that having mental illness is something to be ashamed of. Again, agreed. I've already talked about it. It's called depression shaming, amongst others. Damning you to one of the lowest rungs of the cultural ladder if you happen to have a particular type of brain chemistry. Now, pay attention to that line, kiddos, because when we get to the end of this article, you're going to facepalm, I guarantee it. But yes, I agree. And that mental health treatment often involves getting locked into a prison-like asylum after getting punched in the face by a guy who dressed like a giant bat. Now that one confused the heck out of me, but I'm assuming he's trying to make an actual Batman reference there, but really? We live in a society where recreational abuse of addictive drugs is frequently glorified in pop music, movies, and television. Really? Really? You work around games where they list, what is it? Use of drugs and alcohol, or drug and alcohol references. No, I'm sorry, Holmes. This is where you start to lose me. Especially knowing what I know about the drug war, about how much it's hurt everybody on every side and is costing us obscene amounts of money. And you dare to sit there and say, oh, TV is glorifying addictive drugs. If you're talking about pot, which seems to be the more prevalent thing that's featured, you can just screw right off. Because I've already talked about it, and I'm going to continue to talk about the legalization of such things, because oftentimes it's made this idea that it's addictive, that it's destructive, that it'll cause you to rape, it'll cause you to kill without mercy, it'll turn you into a maniac. Reefer madness, anybody? Oh yeah, but no, today's TV glorifies this. God, why am I surprised by this, knowing what I've known of your journalism as of late? Okay, keep it together. While the fact that many of America's mass shooters we're self-medicating with these very same mind-altering drugs, getting brushed under the rug. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you click on link 2, you will go to a place that talks about hardcore pharmaceutical drugs because, you know, big pharma is bad. They're evil. They're profiteers. Mr. Holmes has just tried to compare hardcore addictive drugs. Not that I'm saying prescription drugs are off the hook, but considering the source, it's not on the right hook in this case, which is slightly ironic, and this article gets more ironic as we go along. He's just compared like cocaine to prescription drugs. He's compared heroin to prescription drugs and said that many serial killers were taking hardcore drugs. You can screw right off, Holmes. It seems that to me that our brains, the way our brains fit into the greater culture, are the factors that most determine our behaviors. No, 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 and no. And how those brains were affected by the world around them might be more effective in preventing future murder-suicides than banning time crisis. And there we're at. There's where we're at. I know this video is running long. I'm going to try to finish up before the 15-minute mark because I need to say this. He goes from saying that society looks down on people for their brain chemistry, and we do tend to, which is stupid. Never mind that Adam Lanza's brain had no abnormalities and no tumors. So there's that, Mr. Holmes. But no, moreover, he goes from talking about society looking down on people for their brain chemistry and then practically finishes the article by making the same exact thing, trying to blame brains in this case, and almost practically brain chemistry itself, because let's face it, the brain itself is just, it's a network of a lot of different centers, cortexes, linkages between the right and the left sides of the brain that tend to deal with chemicals as well as electrical impulses. These can be disrupted in a number of different ways, but the brain is not solely to blame for this. That's like saying that we're just a brain. We can never be moral people because we're just a brain, and our brains and the environment around us, which technically could be considered the inundation of violent video games and this media obsessed with glorifying war and gore and all that. How do you manage that? How do you go from having the point to completely contradicting the good points you were making in one article? I swear, if there were Olympic medals for this, Mr. Holmes, I'm afraid I would have to say you would be a gold medalist in this. And I don't understand you. You yourself seem to go through periods where you make perfect sense, and what you say does work in a realistic context. And then you write crap like this. All you realistically had to say was the Band-Aid analogy or the amputation of the wrong leg analogy. You then started to try to come into my house, into my territory, in my field of expertise when it comes to research, society, and everything, and try to attempt to just bypass all that and say it's just the brain. It's the brain's fault. Brain, brain, brain. Brain can be at fault at times, but that's not the only reasons why people mass murder. I have talked about this at great lengths throughout my entire channel, as well as in my playlist just on exactly about the effects of video games and violent media on human beings.